I moved into apartment 3C and then saw myself in the hallway Reddit horror story. They always say old buildings carry stories in their walls, but no one tells you those stories don't stay buried forever. When I moved into the Crofton Arms, a crumbling Art Deco relic from the 1930s, it was out of desperation, not curiosity. Rent was cheap and the landlord didn't ask too many questions. A single signature, one scratched key, and suddenly I was the newest resident of apartment 30C, a unit that had sat vacant for nearly 5 years. They told me it was just a formality, that someone had passed away there and the paperwork took time. Natural causes, the building manager said with a shrug, but his eyes didn't match the tone in his voice. They lingered too long on the door, on the number, on me. The first week passed in a haze of dust and duct tape. The place smelled of mothballs and scorched plastic, and the radiator clicked all night like teeth chattering in fear. I chalked it up to age. The elevator never stopped on the 3rd floor unless I pressed the button twice. Another quirk I blamed on old wiring. It wasn't until the 4th night that I realized something was off. Not just strange, but off, like a painting hung just slightly askew. At first, it was small, the light in the bathroom flickering on even when I was certain I'd shut it. A coffee mug moving from the sink to the table. Sounds of running water at 3:12 a.m. Always that exact time. I began locking everything. The windows, the bedroom door, even the closet. But still, I'd wake to find drawers open, shoes rearranged, my toothbrush wet even though I hadn't touched it. I accused myself of forgetfulness, stress, maybe even sleepwalking. But it didn't explain the photographs. 3 of them. Wedged behind the kitchen drawer one morning, like they'd been waiting. Black and white, faded, curling at the edges. One showed a woman standing at the hallway window. The second, that same woman seated in what looked like my living room, only the furniture was different. Older, heavier. The 3rd photo, though. That one chilled me. It was the woman again, this time lying in bed, her eyes wide open, mouth parted as if caught mid-sentence. Only the photo had been taken from above. From the ceiling, as if someone was watching her sleep. I tried to shake it off. Told myself maybe they belonged to the previous tenant, some forgotten relic. I threw them out, burned them actually, just to be sure. But the next morning they were back, on my pillow. This time there were 4. I started digging. Crofton Arms had changed hands 8 times in the past 2 decades. There were no online records of apartment 30C beyond 2014. I found a forum buried in the back corners of the web where tenants whispered stories. Never confirmed, never public. A girl went missing in '95. An older man was found in the bathtub in under 3. The water still running to the taps had rusted shut. A tenant in 30C had carved words into the wall before jumping from the fire escape in 2009. No one had translated them, but photos showed the words. Itis namo mi. By week 2, I couldn't sleep. I heard voices, not in my head, but through the walls, vents, even the plumbing. They didn't speak full sentences, just fragments, syllables dragged like nails over tile. I recorded the sounds one night, played them back in the morning and heard nothing but static. But when I slowed the audio down, just 10%, no filters, I heard my name, clear as glass. Jonah. Over and over, a woman's voice. Not pleading, not angry, just insistent, as if I should remember her. I started leaving the apartment during the day. Spent hours in cafes, libraries, wandering the Riverwalk just to avoid going back. But the dreams followed. Always the same. I was in a hallway, longer than any hallway should be, and the doors all bore my number. 3C every door. Dozens, hundreds. I'd open one, and behind it was Meek. Sleeping, eating, staring out the window. In one dream, I opened the door and saw myself smiling. But not at me. At someone else standing behind me. I turned only to wake up, drenched in sweat, heart clawing against my ribs. The worst part wasn't the dreams. It was what came after. I stopped recognizing myself. My voice in recordings sounded wrong. The mole on my neck, I always remembered it being on the left side. Now it was on the right. My handwriting changed. Slightly, enough to make me doubt. I called my sister. She swore I always wrote my cross like that. I didn't. Not before. Not ever. The building knew. I didn't know how, but I felt it. Like I'd been swallowed whole and the walls were slowly digesting me. Even my neighbors acted strange. The woman across the hall, Mrs. Lenz, looked right through me one morning as if she didn't see me at all. The next day, she left a note under my door. One line, "Don't trust the mirror." There was something wrong with the mirror. It was the only thing I hadn't replaced. Heavy oval shaped, mounted to the wall above the fireplace in the living room. I'd caught glimpses in it. My reflection freezing, smiling, even when I wasn't. Once, I walked past and saw my reflection standing still even after I'd moved on. I tried covering it. The sheet slid off in the night. I tried breaking it, but the glass didn't crack, just trembled, like water. Like it knew it was being watched. Then came the final shift, subtle at first. The hallway outside my door grew longer. The elevator took longer to arrive, and sometimes the buttons didn't respond. I looked out the window and saw buildings that hadn't been there before, or had been, but looked different, newer, older, wrong. I passed a mirror in the lobby and saw myself again, but my hair was shorter, my eyes bruised and sunken. I was wearing a sweater I'd never owned. And then, one night, I came home to find my door already open, apartment 30C. The lights were on inside, soft and yellow like candlelight. I heard humming, a familiar tune I couldn't quite place. I stepped inside, heart pounding so loud I couldn't hear my own thoughts, and stopped. Someone was sitting on the couch, back to me. Still. I whispered, "Hello." The figure turned. It was me, but not quite. The skin was wrong. Too smooth, too tight. The eyes glowed faintly, like static before a storm. And the smile of it was the same one I'd seen in my dreams. That was 2 nights ago. Now, I don't know if I ever really left that room, or if I'm the one who came out. The moment our eyes met, mine and the thing that looked like me, I should have run. Should have turned, slammed the door, fled down the stairs, no matter how many flights. But I didn't. I froze. Not because of fear, though it clawed at my ribs. It was something deeper. Recognition. Like when you see yourself in an old photograph from a time you can't remember, but still feel. Something primal, bone deep. The other me stood slowly, deliberately, as if it had been rehearsing this moment. I couldn't move. My feet were cemented to the floor. The thing mirrored me perfectly, posture, blinking even the way my hands trembled. But it smiled too long. Held eye contact a second too long. There was no breath fogging the air from its lips. And when it stepped toward me, I swear the light in the room dimmed, just slightly, like it fed on attention. I backed up finally, fingers reaching behind to the hallway wall for balance, and whispered the only thing I could manage. "Who are you?" It tilted its head, mimicked me, word for word. Same voice, same rhythm. "Who are you?" That broke something in me. I turned and ran, not just out of the apartment, but down the stairs, barefoot, nearly tripping over myself. I didn't stop until I was outside, breathing the sour nighttime air, knees scraping the gravel of the parking lot. I must have stayed there an hour, maybe more. People came and went. Someone asked if I was okay, I think. I couldn't answer. I couldn't even cry. Just sat there, watching the windows of the building, waiting for my own face to appear in one of them. Eventually, I left. I didn't go back inside. Rented a cheap motel on the edge of town. No windows, no mirrors. Slept on the floor beneath the bed with the lights on. But sleep didn't come. The dreams were worse now. More detailed. They weren't dreams of the hallway anymore. They were memories. My memories. But twisted. Wrong. In one, I was sitting at a table with my mother, eating cereal, sunlight pouring in through the blinds. Only she wasn't speaking. Just slowly. For minutes. The sound grew louder and louder until it was deafening. I looked down at the bowl and saw it was filled with teeth. In another, I opened my closet and found dozens of versions of myself hanging like clothes. Smiling, blinking, muttering words I could understand. Their mouths moved, but the sound came from inside my head. I stopped trying to sleep. I tried going to the police. Told them someone had broken into my apartment and impersonated me. They were polite at first. Took down notes. But when they pulled up the tenant record, it showed only one occupant of 3C. No change, no previous complaints. The officer looked at me funny when I asked him to come with me to see the mirror. Said he would file a report. Told me to get some rest. But before I left the station, I glanced at the bulletin board behind the desk. There, tacked among the missing person flyers, was a familiar face. Mine. Same photo from my college ID. Missing since 2019. I don't even remember posing for that picture. Panic set in. I didn't go back to the motel. Didn't call anyone. Who would I even call? My sister hadn't responded to my last message. When I checked her social profile, it said she'd moved to another city months ago. The last post with me and it was gone. It was like I'd been scrubbed from her life. I began to wonder, was I even Jonah anymore? Or was I the copy? I needed answers, real ones. If the building held them, I had to go back. So I waited until nightfall, when Crofton Arms slept behind closed blinds and flickering stairwell lights. I wore gloves, covered my hair with a hoodie, and picked the back lock like I'd seen in too many movies. I didn't expect it to work, but it did. Almost too easily, like the building wanted me to return. The stairs groaned with every step. Familiar, too familiar. My heart kept pace with the echo of my own movements. 3rd floor. My hand hesitated at the door to 3C. I didn't knock. Didn't need to. The door was already cracked open. Inside, silence. No lights. But the mirror, it was glowing faintly. A pulsing shimmer, like moonlight reflected off deep water. I stepped in. No sign of the other me. Just the mirror. Waiting. I approached it slowly. My reflection was me. Just me. But not quite. It blinked too slowly. Moved half a beat behind. And then it smiled, not me. I touched the frame, ice cold. Suddenly, everything shifted. The room darkened. Not like the lights dimming. No. The entire apartment felt submerged, like we dropped below the surface of a lake. Sounds dulled. My limbs grew heavy. And the mirror, God, the mirror, it rippled. Like a stone had been dropped into it. And then a hand reached through. It grabbed my wrist. I screamed, pulled back. But it held fast. Cold fingers wrapped like steel. And then the voice came. A whisper. Not from the mirror, but from inside my skull. Return. The mirror flashed. And for one split second, I saw it all. Rows and rows of people. Sleeping, floating, contained in glass coffins beneath the building. Every tenant who'd ever vanished. Every missing person from the forums. All still. All copied. The real ones stored like relics beneath the foundations. And standing over them. Figures tall, thin, hollow faces, shifting skin. They moved like smoke and static, tending to the bodies like caretakers. Or shepherds, I couldn't tell. I was falling. My vision blurred. I felt my mind slip sideways, like someone had pulled the plug on my thoughts. Then, nothing. When I woke, I was back in the apartment. It was morning. Sunlight through the windows. Birds chirping. The mirror. Gone. I checked the bathroom, the kitchen, even under the floorboards. Nothing. Everything looked normal, except my phone had been reset. No contacts. No photos. No history. The clothes in the closet were all unfamiliar. Sizes slightly off. Favorite colors wrong. I went to the mirror in the hallway and stared. It was me, just not my me. That day I ran into Mrs. Lenz again, only she smiled this time. Nice to meet you, Jonah, she said brightly. Welcome to 3C. I blinked. You know me, we've spoken before. She frowned. I just moved in across the hall yesterday. And that's when it hit me. The roles had reset. I wasn't Jonah anymore. Not really. And someone new had just taken the apartment across the hall. The cycle had started again, and the building wasn't done with me. Not yet. You'd think the mind would scream when it realizes the world isn't real, or that it is, but only in fragments. Mine didn't. It accepted the lie like a blanket in winter. Crofton Arms was a skin now, tightly wrapped around me, and I had stopped pulling at the stitches. The mirror was gone, and so was the Jonah I remembered. But something deeper, older, had rooted itself in me, watching behind my eyes. I knew it every time I passed a mirror and paused too long. Every time a neighbor smiled just a little too wide. Every time I woke with fingernail marks on my arms I couldn't have made myself. The apartment had changed in subtle ways. The hallway extended just 2 steps farther than I remembered. The kitchen tiles had gone from gray to a pale shade of mint. The bedroom door no longer creaked. But my closet did. And the radiator, always so vocal before, had fallen silent. It felt like the building was listening instead of speaking now. Like it was waiting to see what I'd do next. So I tried to pretend I was normal. Pretend I was the version of Jonah the apartment had chosen. Grocery lists, laundry, streaming shows I didn't remember liking. But even pretending had rules here. The first time I left the building for longer than a few hours, I felt it. A tug. Not physical, as if the building itself disapproved. When I returned, the air inside 3C had gone stale, and every item in my refrigerator was spoiled. Milk, eggs, even things that didn't need chilling. Rotten. I understood the message at stay within the system. And so I did. Until he moved in. A guy mid-30s, wary build, nervous smile. He took 3B just down the hall. His name was Mark. Friendly. Too friendly. The kind of man who left his door open while unpacking, who nodded every time we passed. I avoided him for a week. Then 2. But eventually, curiosity wins over caution. One night he caught me by the mailbox. Hey, he said, eyes squinting a little too long at my face. Jonah, right? Apartment 30C. I nodded slowly. He grinned. Funny. My uncle lived there back in the 90s, before he, well, disappeared. That made me freeze. He went on. Family always thought he ran off, but I dunno. He left his keys on the table. Shoes still by the door. Weird HUD. I managed a nod. I wanted to tell him to leave, to burn his lease, but the words lodged in my throat. Then he said something stranger. I've been having dreams since I moved in. Hallways, doors, all numbered 30C. Ever have dreams like that? That was when I knew. He was being tested. The building had turned its eye toward him. A few nights later, I woke to knocking. Not at my door. A soft, rhythmic knock. I pressed my ear to the wall and listened. Heard him shuffle toward the sound. Then silence. Then a creak, as if the door opened. I waited. 10 minutes. 15. Nothing. In the morning, his door was ajar. I walked past, saw the boxes still stacked in the corner, a mug half full of coffee on the table. But Mark was gone. Not even a jacket missing from the hook. Just like that. Another one taken. I tried reporting it. Went to the building manager, a man I'd never seen before. Balding pasty, with sunken eyes and a voice that stuttered like bad radio signal. "Mark who?" he asked. Blinking slowly. "He 3B, I said. "He's gone." Door wide open. "But the 3B's vacant," he muttered, shuffling papers that didn't exist. I walked away. But something was different now. Something inside the walls had stirred. The building didn't like that I'd noticed. That I'd remembered. That night, my reflection didn't follow me. I turned away from the bathroom mirror, but in the corner of my eye, the other me was still brushing his teeth. Still grinning. I smashed it with the heel of my boot, but no cracks formed, just ripples. The glass moved like oil and the reflection grinned wider. Later, I found a message scrawled into the steam on the hallway mirror. "Each is no tiugoni. Each is you." I stopped sleeping. The dreams weren't dreams anymore. They bled into waking life. I'd blink and find myself in unfamiliar parts of the building. Once in the boiler room, once standing at the top of the stairwell, my toes just inches from the edge. I'd pass people in the hallway who didn't blink, who didn't breathe, just stared, then kept walking. One day, I opened my fridge and found a note taped to the inside door. Written in my handwriting, but I hadn't written it. Under the floorboards, 4 paces from the mirror. I did what it said. Pried open the living room floor beneath the coffee table. There, wrapped in yellowed newspaper, was a journal. Old. Leather, with the name Joan O'Callahan carved into the front. Only, it wasn't my handwriting. Inside were pages, dozens, all written in a panic, skipping words, crossing out whole paragraphs. It watches. It learns. The building copies the best version of you it can make. Once it's finished, you're not needed. I've seen it happen. In the mirror, I watched myself watch me. They call them echoes. The copies. They don't always get it right. Sometimes the eyes are wrong. Sometimes the voice stutters. But they're learning. You can't destroy them. But maybe you can trap them. It's why I stayed. To keep it from spreading. I'm the last original. I think, if you're reading this, you're either another echo or the next real one. Either way, it's too late for me. The last page just read, "Don't let it find your true name." I didn't know what that meant. But I knew I couldn't stay in apartment 3C any longer. I packed everything. Clothes. Journal. Left the furniture. Took only what I needed. Waited until dawn and walked out. Down the stairs. Out the lobby. But when I reached the street, Crofton Arms was gone. Behind me was an empty lot. Not rubble. Not ruins. Just an open, flat space. No foundation. No remnants. Just weeds and gravel. Like the building had never existed at all. I spun in circles, heart crashing in my chest, neighbors walking past me like I was invisible. I turned to a stranger and asked, "What used to be here?" They looked at me blankly. "Nothing's been on this block for years. Old warehouse burned down in the 80s. I checked my phone. No contacts. No photos. I checked my address. I checked my arm. The mole was gone, and then a ping. My phone lit up with a notification. "Welcome to Crofton Arms. You've been assigned Unit 30C. The address, a new location, different city, same name." And at the bottom of the screen, in tiny gray text, "Eco recognized. Sync successful." I dropped the phone, but the screen stayed on, and behind me, in the shop window's reflection, someone was watching, smiling. I ran. Not out of fear, no, not anymore. That emotion had long since expired, burned out like a bulb left on too long. What I felt was something more primitive, of violation, of identity, of memory, of self. The reflection in that shop window hadn't just looked like me. It was me. Same crooked scar on the lip from when I fell off my bike at age 8. Same blue-gray eyes I had once been proud of. Same tired slouch in the shoulders. But there was something behind the eyes. A glint that didn't belong to a person. It belonged to it. I spent the next several days moving through unfamiliar cities, hopping buses without destinations, using cash, avoiding cameras, covering mirrors in public bathrooms before using them. I didn't sleep. I barely ate. I started talking to myself just to hear a voice I could trust, until even that stopped sounding like me. Every screen that pinged nearby, every phone buzz, every digital reflection. Any of it could be a signal that the Crofton Arms had found me again, that it was catching up, but I couldn't keep running. That realization settled in on the third night, when I found myself staring at a hotel door labeled 30C. Not my room. Random floor, random building, and yet that number kept following me. I took it as a message, a pattern repeating itself. So I stopped. Not in surrender, but in defiance. If the pattern wanted me back in 30C, then I'd meet it on my terms. I needed help. Not police, not friends. Those ties were already gone. Burned or broken. I needed someone who lived on the fringe of reality. Someone who studied the cracks between what we know and what we fear. I found a man named Ellis Delgrave, a former professor, banned from 3 universities for research into liminal constructs. Architectural anomalies, self-aware structures, cognitive bleed between space and memory. A myth to most, but I tracked down an address buried in an old Reddit thread about haunted buildings. He lived alone in a cluttered house buried under ivy and caution tape, deep in the woods 2 hours outside the city. I half-expected him to slam the door in my face when I told him my story. Instead, he stepped aside and said, "Come in. I've been waiting." His home smelled of dust and forgotten years. Books were piled ceiling high. Diagrams of structures hung from strings like constellations. One wall was covered in Polaroids, all buildings, some intact, some collapsed, and all with a red string tracing their lineage. Crofton Arms was there, centered, circled in black ink. "You're not the first," Ellis said, "but you may be the last." He spoke of buildings like Crofton Arms, not haunted but alive, constructed with intention not by human hands, but by something older. Some structures, he explained, act like organisms. They learn, adapt, grow, and some of them duplicate. Their purpose unknown, their reach expanding with every successful copy. "What do they want?" I asked. Ellis poured tea into chipped mugs and stared into mine before answering. "I don't think they want anything in the way we understand it. They're less like predators and more like mirrors that copy reflections until the real one blurs away." I told him about the echo, the reset, the journal, the disappearance of the building. He nodded slowly. "That means it's mobile now. The Crofton entity has shed its physical shell. You didn't escape it. You released it." I felt sick. "So what do I do?" I asked. Ellis didn't speak. He walked to a drawer and pulled out a key. Old, rusted, with the number 30C engraved into its base. "I recovered this years ago, from another survivor. He didn't last long. Said the key worked in any lock, but only once. You find the new iteration of the structure, wherever it's nested next, and you go back in. This time on your terms." "Why would I go back?" "Because if you don't," he said gravely, "it will keep copying. More people will vanish, more echoes will be made, and eventually it will replace you in every memory anyone ever had. You'll stop existing even in your own mind." He paused. "Or maybe that's already happening." That night, I slept for the first time in days. When I woke, Ellis was gone. So was the key. In its place was a note to follow the numbers, trust only analog, and remember, mirrors lie. There was also a printed address, a motel outside Detroit, room 30C. I went. I traveled by train, then walked the last 6 miles. The motel was nameless. Flickering neon sign, empty parking lot, a wind that carried no scent. I approached the manager, a thin man with gray eyes and a voice like torn fabric. "Room?" he asked. 3C. I said. He handed me a key without checking his ledger. Inside, the room was cold, stale. No mirror, no television, just a rotary phone on a desk and a small tape recorder with a blank cassette labeled PLAYME. I pressed it. "You've made it this far. You're not the original, but that's okay. The original's gone. Or buried. Or dreaming. But what you are now, that still matters. Crofton Arms is rebuilding. It's taken root in a different city. The copies are more refined. Smarter, harder to detect. You won't find it by searching addresses. You'll find it by watching the people. The echoes, when they walk past mirrors, they don't blink. When they speak, listen closely. The breath doesn't fog. The smiles hold too long. They are learning. But so can you. The next door will find you. And when it does, you'll have a choice. Open it or vanish. You must remember who you were." The tape clicked off. The rotary phone rang once. No more. I waited 3 days. On the 4th, someone knocked. 3 sharp taps. I opened the door. Outside stood a child, no older than 10. She looked up at me with wide, sunken eyes and held out a slip of paper. Then turned and ran. On the paper, an address, a building I'd never heard of. But beneath it, in careful block letters, was a message. Crofton Arms, rain stated, floor 3. Unit C. Access granted. I knew what I had to do. I traveled there at nightfall. The building wasn't like the original. It was newer, polished. Glass and steel. But I felt it the moment I stood in the lobby. The pull, the pressure. Like something ancient crouching just beneath the surface. The elevator refused to move at first. I pressed the button 3 times. The doors opened. 3rd floor. The hallway smelled of lavender and static. Unit 30C had a keypad instead of a lock. No numbers, just a fingerprint scanner. I placed my hand on it. Green light. Click. Inside, nothing but mirrors, walls, floors, ceiling, all reflection. And in every pane, hundreds of me. Some crying, some screaming, some smiling. One stepped forward from the glass, identical, until it blinked. Wrong, it spoke. I've been waiting. I held up the tape recorder, pressed play. The voice from before echoed again. When you find the true echo, offer it the key. Only the real one can hold it without burning. I reached into my pocket. The key. Ellis hadn't taken it after all. I handed it forward. The echo reached out, touched it, and screamed. Its hand blistered, blackened, turned to ash. I stepped into the mirror. The world dissolved, and I fell. Falling wasn't what I imagined it would be. There was no rush of wind, no gravity pulling at my stomach, no up or down. Just motion, slow and ending, like sinking through syrup made of light and memory. My body didn't move. Myself did. Past snapshots of faces I used to know. My mother's laugh, muffled and rewinding. My childhood home, flickering like a VHS tape caught in a loop. The more I fell, the more it all blurred. What was real, what was echo, what had been mine before Crofton Arms unspooled my identity like thread through a needle too sharp. I landed without sound. The space was dark but not empty. It pulsed alive with a rhythm that wasn't quite breathing. Walls of stone, yet no heat. Air, but no wind. The silence wasn't quiet. It listened. I stood slowly, half expecting to see rows of bodies like the vision I'd once had, but there were no pods, no caretakers, only doors. Thousands, each marked with 3CK. Some looked like apartments. Others motel rooms, offices, storage units, even a metal hatch embedded in the floor marked 3C, dripping with condensation. I realized now this wasn't just a Crofton Arms. It was the heart of all of them. The seed, the origin. I had fallen into the spinal cord of a thing that wore architecture like a costume. One of the doors pulsed faintly. I approached. It wasn't locked. Inside, I found me. Again, this one was calm. Seated in a chair, hands folded, as though awaiting a job interview. It looked up and smiled, and the smile didn't feel wrong. It felt tired, honest, familiar. "I'm the first," it said, voice soft like dust. I was the original Jonah Callahan. My breath caught. "No, I am," I said, uncertain even as the words left my lips. He nodded. "You might be. Or you might be one of them. But that's not what matters anymore." I stared, heart thudding. "I was the first the building copied," he continued. "I tried to fight it, escape it. But you can't run from something you're part of. Crofton Arms doesn't trap you by force. It persuades you, offers you something cleaner, smoother, perfected. A version of yourself that never hesitates, never fails, never forgets. And when you start to believe in that version, the real you fades." He stood. "I've been here in this root chamber, watching new echoes form. Watching them take over lives. Watching the old ones be buried behind walls in memories, in dreams. But you made it farther than any of us. Why?" I whispered. "Why me?" "Because you never stopped doubting," he said. "Even when they polished your smile, mirrored your voice, mapped every gesture. You questioned that splinter of doubt. It kept your thread alive. The lights above us dimmed. A rumble. The walls flexed like a throat preparing to swallow. You're out of time," he said, stepping forward. "There's only one way to end this." He reached into his pocket and handed me something. A fragment of the mirror. Black glass, jagged, humming faintly with heat. "This is what it's all built on," he said. "Every echo, every Crofton doorway, every version, it all connects through the mirror. Through this, if you shatter the root, the reflections will collapse. But so will everything attached to them." I understood. To kill the echoes, I had to kill us too. He placed his hand over mine, closed my fingers around the shard. "I'll hold the door," he said. And before I could speak again, he stepped out, into the hallway of endless 3Cs. The moment he did, the mirrors flared to life. Images flickered on every door. Every copy, every version of me across time, across fabricated memories and borrowed lives. They all turned. They all looked at me. I ran. Through the core, through the echoing hum, toward the pulsing root. A chamber of mirrors stacked like crystal columns, each reflecting infinite versions of myself. Laughing, screaming, whispering secrets to people who no longer existed. I held up the shard. The reflections recoiled. Some begged. Some snarled. One reached through the glass, whispering, "We can fix you." I didn't believe it. I drove the shard into the base of the central mirror. A sound, like bone splintering underwater. The mirrors cracked, not just in the chamber. Everywhere, I felt the fracture ripple out like a scream across dimensions. Doors began folding inward, collapsing like lungs exhaling for the last time. The ground trembled. A tearing sensation pulled at me, not physical, but conceptual. Like parts of my identity were being ripped away. Memories of summer days, the smell of my grandfather's garage, the taste of strawberry milk as a kid. All of it peeled back. And then light. Just pure, endless light. And silence. I awoke in a hospital bed. A nurse stood nearby, scribbling something on a clipboard. "You're awake," she said. "We weren't sure you'd come out of it." My mouth was dry. I tried to speak. "Car accident," she said gently. 2 weeks ago. You've been in a coma." I blinked. The room was real. Too real. No mirrors on the walls. Just windows, sunlight, the smell of antiseptic and blooming lilacs from a vase on the table. A doctor came in later, asked me questions. My name, date of birth, memories. I answered everything. Some of it felt like reciting lines from a script, but it was the words. My sister came to visit. She hugged me like someone who had waited years. "You look different," she said, tears in her eyes. "Better," she nodded. "Real." I left the hospital a week later. There was no Crofton Arms, no record of it. I searched online, went through property records, scoured old forums. Nothing. Every instance of its name returned empty, like it had never been built, like I had never lived there. But I remembered. Every floorboard creak, every mirrored smile. And sometimes, when I pass certain buildings on unfamiliar streets, I feel a pressure, a flicker, a whisper behind glass. And when I look too long into my reflection, I still wonder, am I the one who made it out? Or just the last echo pretending I did? The truth, I don't need to know anymore. Because I've learned the most important lesson of all. Mirrors don't reflect who you are. They reflect what's watching you. Enjoyed the video? Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you never miss an update.